My name's Voegel. I am the research assistant for the Crane USI partnership, and for the past 10 months or so, I've been working on researching different tech transfer mechanisms that we can eventually use to help USI and the surrounding community gain access to federal inventions and patents and things of that sort. The purpose of this presentation is to not only show what I have done in the past year research-wise, but try to relate it to how it can benefit the USI community. And the problem that we set out to alleviate at the beginning of my employment was that federal laboratories are difficult to approach and utilize. We've found that if anybody just tries to go straight up to a laboratory, many times they get turned away, and if you get turned away, you can't therefore go in and try to gain access to their knowledge or expertise, so then you can't utilize their different capabilities. Whenever we found the problem, we went through a strategic planning effort and found 8 key areas that we needed to focus upon in order to alleviate this problem. The first key area was the players, which are the different potential clientele that we will have that will be interacting in these different mechanisms. The majority of the time it's going to be one or more federal laboratories with somebody that's a non-federal entity. The next one was success stories. This is the just different success stories of people who have been able to use these mechanisms to approach the federal laboratories. We wanted to be able to draw from these in order to better our abilities and process of going about this. The third one is Christopher Monsey, who is the patent attorney at Crane. He is a very knowledgeable person, and we wanted to be able to gain his knowledge and add it into what we do. We realized that him and people that have his position at different laboratories will be very beneficial. We just have to find the right approach to get to them. And we've been struggling with that, but we are planning on doing that in the future. The fourth one is creating a useful resource, because if we have all of the knowledge to ourselves, other people aren't going to be able to use it. So we needed to create a useful resource that is also impactful, as the next one says, so that they can use the resource and then gain the knowledge that we have, and then we can help them navigate the resource. And the most impactful format that we found was a website that we've been developing. And as of this point, it's a private website, but it's going to continue to evolve and will be able to be used in the future to help the community and the USI and potentially other people outside of the community with the tech transfer process. We also needed to be able to share the benefits of this resource so that people will want to use it. And if we don't clearly show the benefits in the future, people will just steer away from it and not know how or what it is. The seventh one is laboratory personnel. We found that it's very hard to get in touch with laboratory personnel, but it's very important, because once you have that one contact with the right person at the laboratory, it is very easy to then further your relationship with the laboratory. The final one is flowcharts, which we are going to, in the future, create a flowchart for each of the mechanisms from the beginning to the end, so that if somebody comes to us, we would know what's the next step and the next step, because these are very tedious and drawn out processes a lot of the times, and we would like to be able to help people navigate these. Federal technology transfer most often refers to specifically to transfers occurring between federal laboratories and any non-federal organization, including private industry, academia, state, and local governments. One of the first things that we did was we found and researched 60 different mechanisms, and with the research that we gained in these mechanisms, We were able to gain a brief understanding on all of them, but in the future we'd like to dig deeper and try to learn everything that we can about each of the mechanisms. We put this research into a MediaWiki website, and that way we have access to all of it in one location. We also were able to categorize the benefits and capabilities of each of the mechanisms so that we can search through them if somebody were to come to us saying we need funds or we need equipment. We will know which mechanisms can be used for that. We also began the process of making short informative videos for each of the mechanisms. These videos will eventually be posted to YouTube so that people can gain a brief understanding on each of the mechanisms, and they will also be shown or be guided towards us so that we can help them. And the goal of this is to eventually make USI known for tech transfer and get the USI name out there as a specialist in this area. We also researched into the main federal agencies and departments. During our research in this, we surveyed them and we found and recorded the goal and missions and values of each of the departments and agencies. We also realized that the different agencies and laboratories don't all use every one of the mechanisms that are out there. The different agencies have their own mechanisms that other agencies can't use, and they also just don't utilize others. And even within the agencies, there's different laboratories that don't use a mechanism that other laboratories within that same agency will use. We also found that the mission and vision of the laboratory of all the laboratories that we found is very key whenever you are approaching the laboratory, because you have to put everything in terms of benefit for them as well as benefit for you, or the relationship and process will not be able to go on. And that's something that it was very evident early on in the process that it had to be done. For the remainder of my talk, I'm going to relate 8 key areas to the USI audience. These are areas that we found that we feel benefit USI and could potentially benefit faculty members or the surrounding community or the university as a whole. The first one is equipment, then there's funding, cooperative research, personnel exchanges, patents and patenting, facilities, which are just government facilities, then there's partnership agreements, and then testing and services. The first one is equipment acquisition. Our goal is to acquire equipment for faculty members so that they can use that equipment for their own research or classwork, so that students will have access to more equipment. There's three mechanisms that we have found so far that will allow us to do that. The equipment or the educational partnership agreements have actually already been used with Crane in order to gain some technology for the engineering department. Then there's also a DOE specific equipment gift agreement in which they will, if an educational institution can show a need, they will give the equipment to the educational institution for as little cost as they can. And they will, if they can, they prefer to give it to an educational institution. And then a third one is the material transfer agreement, which is a little bit different than the other two, because in that one, the equipment is gifted or loaned to a university, but the research has to be beneficial to both the university and the laboratory. So if it's research-based, the lab will have to get something out of it as well. The good thing about the material transfer agreement, though, is even though it's beneficial to the university and the laboratory, the intellectual property that is developed in that is completely protected and usually goes to the collaborating party instead of the federal government. Cooperative research and development agreements are low-cost agreements used to stimulate commercialization of technologies that are owned by the federal government. In this agreement, all parties will provide personnel, services, facilities, and/or equipment and resources to the other party. The one major benefit of this is that it provides commercial exposure for technology, and it also allows the collaborating party to receive technical assistance from the federal government, which the technical assistance can also be gained through a simple technical assistance agreement, in which technical assistance ranges anywhere from a simple phone call if you have a question to an on-site visit, to where you can either go to the laboratory or the laboratory will come to you in order to help you with your questions. The next one is small business innovation research and small business technology transfer. These are designed to stimulate technological innovation among small businesses, which they declare small business to be 500 employees or less. These grants are awarded based on technical merit and scientific merit, that they're not going to give it to someone that can't show their ability to use this. These two mechanisms are available to university employees. If a university employee drops their employment to 49% or less, they can then be the lead on applying for these grants, and they can then use the money to either further their small business that they have, or actually start a small business and then perform the research that is decided upon in the agreement. For the STTR, it's a little bit different. It can actually be, it only has to be 40% research for the small business, and you have to then partner with an educational institution to do at least 30% of the research. So a university can just team up with a different small business that doesn't even have to necessarily be affiliated with it, and then they can do 30% of the research and receive some of the funding for it. The IP that is developed in this goes straight to the small business. The government only has rights to it royalty-free, but anything outside of the federal government, the royalties go straight to the small business. Another way that people can receive funding from the government is through grants and the NASA joint sponsored research agreements. These are just two other agreements that wanted to briefly mention as ways to receive funding, but we're not really going to touch on them in this. The next mechanism is personnel exchange program. This allows laboratory personnel to work in a university, and also allows university personnel to work in the laboratory. These agreements enhance the technical capabilities of both the laboratory and the educational institution. It allows, as a faculty member, it would allow you to research for an extended period of time at the laboratory, and will give you the capabilities and the money and stuff like that that the laboratory has. So it will give your research that extra capability that you need. Patents there's two areas of patents that we are interested in. It's patent licensing, which is simply just a permit to practice the invention that is patented. In order to receive a patent license, you have to present commercialization opportunities. If you're trying to get a patent from the government, they want to see how you're going to end up getting the money through it, through commercialization. And we've also been able to use patents for student experiential opportunities, such as the TCA, which is Technology Commercialization Academy, in which students receive, I think, 2 or 3 patents from, it's been Crane in the past, and they go through an ideation process and find commercialization opportunities, and then present them to different people in order to try to get money and potentially go on with this patent or this commercialization idea on their own. We've also used the patents in the entrepreneurship minor and had them go through experiential learning processes with them and do ideation and commercialization ideas with that. Two ways outside of patent licensing that you can potentially gain access to patents is partnership intermediary agreements and educational partnership agreements. That's how we have gained access in the past for the TCA and the entrepreneurship minor. The next mechanism is the use of user facilities. This allows for unique government facilities and or equipment to be used by the technical community or a university for a fee. It enhances the technical capabilities of the partners and the facilities, and because the research performed at the facility can either be non-proprietary or proprietary. It enhances because you then have access to everything in that laboratory in order to use it for your research. So the research will benefit them because it has to show, or it has a need for them, and it will also benefit you because you have access to the different technologies that USI doesn't have. Partnership intermediary agreements they facilitate technology licensing, and a major benefit is the enhancement of educational resources by opening doors. It provides a university with just general assistance from a laboratory, and this agreement is considered a building block for the future of a relationship with a laboratory. These and EPAs are designed as a start to the relationship, and then the relationship will further grow. We've also identified 3 mechanisms that will help us with community involvement more than just USI. The 3 mechanisms are commercial test agreements, work for others, and work for private party. In these agreements, a federal entity will provide a service that is not readily available in the industry, and there must be no conflict between the commercial sector and the government. The government doesn't want to have to bid. They only want to use these if they're the only person that can do what you need. There also has to be no conflict of interest for the federal entity that is involved, and it has to promote the objectives of the laboratory or entity that is going forward with this. The main benefit of these 3 is the high quality of the result that you're going to get from the government. They guarantee a high quality of result, and they also guarantee 100% confidentiality unless you allow them to give out your results to other individuals. We've also found some beneficial websites that will help that contain a whole lot of information that will need to be further dug into, and we plan on helping individuals mine these websites for opportunities that they have. These are just a few websites. There's an abundance of information out there in which individuals can dig through them. The first one is the Federal Lab Consortium website, which contains a list of all the technologies that any federal laboratory currently has available for licensing. So this could help someone who is interested in the patent licensing aspect for commercialization. They can go here and see what potential inventions or patents are useful for them and which they might want to gain access to. This FLC also has a designated individual for each laboratory. This representative is a good way to gain a brief understanding of the laboratory, and also could be a way for whoever is interested in partnering with the laboratory to get that first interaction with someone there, because that first step is oftentimes hard to get. The next one is Dod Tech Match, which is a website that has a list of every patent that the Department of Defense currently has, and This is another way for people who are interested in DoD patents to see what is available to potentially be licensed. The third one is federal business opportunities. This website contains a list of all of the different business opportunities that currently exist with the federal government. These can range from grants to solicitations to pre-solicitation announcements. It's just a one-stop shop of sorts to go and see what current grants or solicitations are out there that an individual might be interested in applying for. The next one is the Sbir Sttr website. This is a website that has every Sbir or Sttr solicitation of the past, present, and the immediate future out there, to where you know what is available and what has been available. A lot of times these solicitations are an annual basis, to where you can kind of be prepared for when they will be available. The next one is the Small Business Administration. This is a website in which small businesses can go to this and they can receive help in starting their business, and they can also see a list of loans and grants that the federal government currently has available for small businesses. It also contains different contract opportunities for contracting work with the federal government. This is another way that small businesses and individuals can potentially work with the federal government. And then the last is just the dedicated laboratory websites. Each laboratory will have their own website, and if you know what lab you are wanting to work with, this is a great way to see their mission and vision, and then you can begin to form your approach around that so that you can have the greatest chance of getting access to that laboratory. The framework for the future, we've begun the process of creating relationships with laboratory representatives so that we can potentially already have that connection with the labs and help individuals by putting them in contact with somebody. We've also began to engage the USI community, and we will begin to engage the USI community and partners with our resource that we are creating. At this stage, it's not ready to actually go out and be seen by others. We're still forming it, but this resource will continue to mature and grow, and will eventually be a way that we could potentially even gain revenue by giving people access to this resource. We also see a great future for equipment acquisition. We currently have a list of equipment that we are trying to acquire, and the goal is to set a certain amount of, a dollar amount of equipment that we want to acquire a year, and we want to either meet or exceed that goal each year. As of right now, we don't know what that goal will be, but we want to eventually acquire the items that we already know we need, and others through the different mechanisms that we have talked about previously. And at this point, I'll take any questions that anyone has. Or comments, those are.
You're saying right now that the website is private?
Right now, the only people that have access to it are myself and Andy.
Oh, okay. So that's what I was asking. Is it available just to the community? I mean, to the university community settings?